this will stop an avoidant man from pulling away forever. You ever feel like the harder you try to hold on to someone, the more they pull away? Like you're pouring your heart into a relationship, but the person you love keeps slipping through your fingers? Listen, this isn't just about them, this is about you and the way you show up in the relationship. Because when you understand human psychology, you gain power over the dynamic. And when you have power, you stop reacting and start leading. Let's get real. Avoidant men don't pull away because they don't care. They pull away because at some point in their life, their subconscious mind wired them to equate closeness with pain. Maybe they grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, unpredictable, or overwhelming. Maybe they learned that independence was the only way to survive. But here's the thing, just because someone has an avoidant attachment doesn't mean they can't love deeply. It means they've been programmed to feel safe at a distance. So if you keep chasing, if you keep trying to force them closer when they're not ready, what do you think happens? They feel trapped. They feel overwhelmed and they run. People are naturally drawn to certainty. It's a fundamental principle of human psychology. When someone walks into a room with confidence, speaks with conviction, and carries themselves with assurance, others gravitate toward them. This isn't about arrogance or pretending to be something you're not. It's about embodying a deep, unshakable belief in yourself. And when it comes to relationships, especially with avoidant men, this principle becomes even more powerful. An avoidant man is wired to pull away from emotional intensity, not because he doesn't care, but because closeness triggers something deep within him, a fear of losing himself, a fear of being trapped, a fear of being vulnerable. The moment he senses that someone is relying too much on his validation, the walls go up. It's not a conscious decision, it's a reflex. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not the connection itself that makes him withdraw. It's the energy behind the connection. If you approach him from a place of neediness, insecurity, or fear, his subconscious mind registers that as pressure. He may not even be able to articulate why, but something inside him feels the urge to create space. He might start responding less, taking longer to text back, or canceling plans more often. The more you try to hold on, the more he pulls away. But if you shift your energy, if you step into a place of confidence and self-worth, everything changes. Confidence isn't about faking indifference. It's not about playing games or acting like you don't care. That's just another form of insecurity disguised as control. True confidence is knowing that your value isn't dependent on someone else's behavior. It's the belief that you are whole and complete on your own, that you bring something meaningful to the table, and that if someone isn't capable of meeting you there, it's their loss, not yours. When you embody this, an avoidant man senses it. Instead of feeling pressure to reassure you, he feels drawn to your presence. Instead of feeling like he has to manage your emotions, he starts to trust the space between you. Because now the dynamic has shifted. You're no longer seeking something from him, you're offering something to him. Think about how powerful this is. Instead of worrying about why he's pulling away, you focus on your own energy. Instead of questioning whether he cares, you trust yourself enough to know that the right person will want to be with you. This isn't about pushing him away or making him chase you. It's about creating an environment where he wants to come closer. Men, especially avoidant men, don't fall for neediness. They fall for presence. They fall for someone who is so deeply grounded in their own life, passions, and purpose that being with them feels like an enhancement, not an obligation. When you radiate confidence, it sends a message. I don't need you, but I choose you. And that distinction is everything. Imagine this. Instead of anxiously wondering when he'll text back, you go about your day with joy and focus. Instead of overanalyzing his actions, you invest in your own growth, your own happiness, your own fulfillment. That shift in energy is felt. It's the difference between someone who is waiting to be chosen and someone who already knows they are valuable. Think about the people in your life who exude confidence. They don't beg for attention. They don't seek constant reassurance. They simply exist in their power. And because of that, they naturally draw people in. This is exactly how relationships work. People want to be around others who make them feel good, who radiate security, who bring light into a space. If your energy is constantly questioning, seeking, or doubting, that energy is felt. But when you step into your own power, you become magnetic. This is the key to breaking the cycle with an avoidant man. Not by chasing, not by waiting for him to change, but by becoming the kind of person he feels safe moving toward. Because when he senses that you are solid in yourself, when he sees that your happiness isn't dependent on his approval, something shifts. He realizes that he can be close to you without feeling smothered. He realizes that he can connect without losing himself. And that's when everything transforms. Space in a relationship is often misunderstood. Many people believe that if someone needs space, it means they're losing interest or that something is wrong. But in reality, space is not the enemy of love, it's an essential part of it. This is especially true when dealing with an avoidant man, someone who naturally needs more room to process emotions and maintain his sense of independence. However, space without connection can lead to distance, and distance can lead to disconnect. The key is learning how to give space while still maintaining a deep sense of emotional closeness. When an avoidant man pulls away, it's usually not because he wants to leave, it's because he needs to regulate himself. His attachment style has trained him to see too much closeness as a potential risk. Maybe in his past, emotional intimacy felt suffocating, overwhelming, or even painful. He may have learned that being too close to someone meant losing control over his own life. So his natural response is to create space. This isn't a rejection of you, it's his way of protecting himself. But here's where most people make a mistake. They panic. The moment they sense distance, they react emotionally. They start reaching out more, asking questions, or trying to pull the person back in. This comes from a good place. It's a natural human instinct to want to maintain connection. But to an avoidant man, this feels like pressure. And pressure triggers the very response you don't want: withdrawal. So what do you do instead? You allow space, but you don't let it turn into complete disconnection. There's a huge difference between giving someone room to breathe and completely stepping away from the relationship. Space doesn't have to mean silence. It doesn't have to mean avoidance. Instead, it can be a time for both of you to center yourselves while maintaining an underlying sense of connection. For example, if he pulls away, instead of bombarding him with messages or shutting down completely, try a simple approach. A quick check-in like, "Hey, I'm here when you're ready," is powerful. It lets him know that he has the space he needs without the fear that you're abandoning him. It reassures him that you are secure in yourself, that you're not pushing for closeness, but you're also not disappearing. The energy behind this matters. If you say it from a place of fear, if deep down you're still anxiously waiting for a response, he'll feel it. But if you genuinely trust that he will return when he's ready, he will sense that too. Your confidence in the connection allows him to relax. He doesn't have to pull away harder just to secure his own independence. Another important factor is how you use the space yourself. Many people focus so much on what the other person is doing that they forget to nurture their own life. Instead of waiting for him to come back, use this time to pour into yourself. Pursue your passions. Engage in activities that make you feel alive. Strengthen other relationships in your life. And this isn't about making him jealous or playing games. It's about maintaining your own emotional well-being. When you do this, something incredible happens. Instead of feeling like he has to fight for his freedom, he starts to realize that you're not a source of pressure in his life. He sees that being with you doesn't mean giving up his independence. In fact, he starts to associate you with a sense of peace and ease. And when that happens, the need to pull away decreases. There's a natural rhythm in every relationship, a push and pull that happens between two people. The healthiest relationships aren't the ones where two people are constantly fused together. They are the ones where each person feels free to be themselves while still choosing to come together. This balance is what creates lasting connection. So instead of fearing space, embrace it. See it as a necessary part of the dynamic, something that allows both of you to grow individually while deepening your bond. When you stop resisting his need for space and instead create an environment where he feels safe staying connected, everything shifts. He no longer sees closeness as a threat, but as something that enhances his life, and that's when he stops pulling away. Avoidant men aren't afraid of love itself. They're afraid of what love has represented in their past. To someone with an avoidant attachment style, intimacy can feel like a trap, like something that demands too much and leaves them with too little control. This fear isn't always logical, and often it isn't even conscious. It's rooted in past experiences where emotional closeness may have felt suffocating, unpredictable, or even painful. The key to creating a secure connection with an avoidant man isn't to push harder for closeness, it's to help him see that love with you means freedom, not entrapment. Many people make the mistake of trying to convince an avoidant man to stay. They use words, reassurance, or emotional appeals to get him to open up. But logic and persuasion rarely work when someone's emotional wiring is telling them to run. Instead, what influences him most is how the relationship feels. If love feels like pressure, expectation, or an obligation, his instincts will tell him to pull away. But if love feels light, freeing, and expansive, he won't feel the same urge to escape. The first step in shifting this dynamic is to stop making closeness feel like a demand. Many people, without realizing it, communicate expectations that an avoidant man finds overwhelming. They might say things like, "Why don't you ever open up to me?" or "I feel like you don't care about me," or even something as simple as, "We need to talk about us. While these statements come from a place of genuine need, to an avoidant man, they can feel like pressure to perform emotionally. Instead of pushing for deeper conversations or more affection when he isn't ready, the key is to create an environment where he wants to come closer on his own. This happens when he starts to associate the relationship with ease rather than stress, when he feels like he can be himself without being judged, when he feels accepted rather than expected to change, and when he sees that love with you doesn't require him to lose his sense of self. That's when he starts to let down his walls. One powerful way to do this is by focusing on shared experiences rather than emotional analysis. Avoidant men often struggle with verbal intimacy, but they connect deeply through action. Instead of sitting him down for a heart-to-heart conversation about his feelings, try engaging in activities that bring you closer naturally. Go on an adventure together, engage in a hobby he loves, or share a moment of laughter. When he experiences positive emotions with you that aren't tied to pressure or expectations, his subconscious mind starts to associate the relationship with safety rather than stress. Another important shift is to make sure he doesn't feel like the relationship is consuming his identity. An avoidant man pulls away when he feels like he's losing himself in a relationship. The healthiest way to counter this fear is by maintaining your own sense of independence and individuality. When he sees that you have your own life, your own passions, and your own sense of fulfillment outside of him, it reassures him that being close to you won't mean giving up his freedom. This means embracing your own energy rather than molding yourself around him. It means having a life so full and rich that he sees the relationship as a beautiful addition to what you already have rather than something that defines your entire world. The less pressure he feels to be the sole source of your happiness, the more willing he will be to step into the connection on his own terms. A crucial part of this is emotional self-regulation. Many people, when faced with an avoidant partner's withdrawal, react with anxiety or insecurity. They might overanalyze his behavior, seek reassurance, or demand more closeness as a way to feel safe. But when you show that you can handle distance without falling apart, it sends a powerful message. You are strong, secure, and capable of holding space for the relationship without fear. This, in turn, makes him feel safer with you. Ultimately, an avoidant man needs to see that love doesn't have to be something that takes away from him. It can be something that adds to his life. When he experiences a relationship where he feels accepted, where connection feels effortless instead of overwhelming, and where he knows he can be close without losing himself, that's when he stops running. When an avoidant man starts to feel emotionally overwhelmed, his first instinct is to pull away. This isn't because he doesn't care, but because his nervous system is wired to seek distance when intimacy feels too intense. If every interaction in the relationship revolves around heavy emotional discussions, expectations, or pressure to connect, it becomes exhausting for him. He doesn't necessarily want to end the relationship, but he starts to associate it with stress rather than joy. This is why breaking the emotional pattern is so crucial, because when connection feels like a choice rather than obligation, he no longer feels the need to escape. Most people, when faced with emotional distance, respond in ways that make the situation worse. They might initiate deep conversations, ask for reassurance, or try to force closeness. While these responses are understandable, they often have the opposite effect on an avoidant man. The more he feels like he's being pulled into something he isn't emotionally prepared for, the stronger his instinct to withdraw. What many don't realize is that the way to bring him closer isn't through words, it's through energy and experience. One of the most powerful ways to shift the dynamic is to reintroduce playfulness into the relationship. Playfulness is a natural disruptor of emotional heaviness. It brings lightness, fun, and a sense of ease. When a relationship starts to feel like a series of deep discussions about feelings and commitment, it stops feeling like a safe place. But when you shift the focus back to shared laughter, adventure, and spontaneity, he starts to associate being with you with something positive rather than something draining. Imagine this. He's been pulling away, and instead of initiating a serious talk about why he's distant, you invite him to do something fun. Maybe it's trying a new activity, exploring a new place, or simply sending a lighthearted message that makes him smile. That simple shift in energy breaks the pattern. Instead of feeling like he has to manage emotions or meet expectations, he gets to just be with you. And when he feels that ease, his walls start to come down naturally. Another way to change the emotional pattern is to stop making everything about the relationship. When conversations constantly revolve around where things are going or how he's feeling, it puts a subconscious pressure on him. But when you bring fresh energy into the connection, talking about new ideas, sharing exciting experiences, and focusing on life outside of the relationship, it creates a sense of curiosity and intrigue. Instead of feeling like he's being analyzed or expected to provide emotional depth on demand, he starts to engage more naturally. Avoidant men are often drawn to relationships where they feel emotionally safe, and emotional safety doesn't come from forcing connection, it comes from from allowing it to develop at its own pace. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that more emotional intensity equals more love. But for someone with avoidant tendencies, love is often best expressed in moments of ease, in the unspoken understanding that they are valued without pressure to be anything other than themselves. Another powerful shift is to mirror his energy instead of chasing it. If he starts to pull away, rather than panicking or trying to pull him back in, you can take a step back yourself. This doesn't mean playing games. It means respecting the rhythm of the relationship. When he sees that you're not trying to force anything, it allows him to process his emotions without feeling like he has to fight for space. And paradoxically, when he no longer feels like he has to defend his independence, he becomes more open to connection. This also applies to communication. Is being distant, instead of confronting him with, "Why are you ignoring me?" or "What's wrong with us?" A simple shift in approach can change everything. Sending a light, pressure-free message like, "Hey, hope you're having a good day, no pressure to respond, just thinking of you," removes the weight from the interaction. It reassures him that you're still there, but it also gives him the space to re-engage on his terms. One of the most overlooked aspects of emotional connection is the ability to create a sense of newness. When a relationship falls into predictable patterns, especially patterns of emotional heaviness, it becomes something to avoid rather than something to look forward to. But when you continuously introduce new experiences, conversations, and moments of joy, it keeps the relationship dynamic and engaging. Breaking the emotional pattern isn't about pretending emotions don't exist. It's about recognizing that emotions thrive in an environment of trust and ease. When you create a relationship where connection feels enjoyable rather than obligatory, where closeness isn't something that's constantly being demanded but something that happens naturally, that's when an avoidant man stops feeling the need to pull away. The key to making an avoidant man feel safe enough to stop pulling away isn't about forcing him to change. It's about creating an environment where emotional connection feels natural rather than something he has to resist. Many people try to fix an avoidant man by analyzing his behavior, demanding more intimacy, or pushing for deeper conversations, but the real breakthrough happens when you shift the focus from changing him to changing how he experiences connection with you. At his core, an avoidant man fears that closeness will come at the cost of his freedom. This fear isn't something he chooses, it's deeply wired into his nervous system. At some point in his life, he learned that being too emotionally close to someone could mean losing control, feeling smothered, or being obligated to meet expectations he isn't prepared for. His distancing behaviors are not about a lack of love, they're about self-preservation. But when he realizes that a relationship with you doesn't mean losing himself, he no longer feels the need to withdraw. One of the most effective ways to create this sense of safety is through consistency. Avoidant men are often hyper-aware of shifts in emotional energy. If they sense that you're anxiously trying to pull them back when they take space, it reinforces their belief that closeness equals pressure. But when you remain steady, when your mood doesn't fluctuate based on his behavior, it sends a powerful message. You are secure within yourself, and you don't need to chase him to feel complete. Consistency doesn't mean overgiving, nor does it mean being emotionally distant. It means showing up in a way that feels stable, calm, and grounded. It means communicating without demanding. It means offering warmth without expecting immediate reciprocation. The more he sees that you can hold space for the relationship without overwhelming him, the more he starts to relax into the connection. Another crucial element in creating emotional safety is acceptance. Many avoidant men have spent their lives feeling like they aren't enough in relationships, that they can't meet the emotional needs of their partner, that they'll eventually disappoint someone, or that love always comes with strings attached. When he senses that you accept him for who he is rather than trying to change him, it dismantles his defenses. He starts to trust that he can be himself with you without the fear of being criticized, controlled, or emotionally trapped. Acceptance doesn't mean tolerating neglect or allowing your own needs to go unmet. It means understanding his patterns without taking them personally. Instead of reacting with frustration when he pulls away, you respond with self-assurance. Instead of demanding emotional expression on your timeline, you give him space to open up in his own way. This shift changes everything, because the moment he stops feeling like he has to defend his autonomy, he naturally becomes more open to connection. One of the most overlooked aspects of emotional safety is patience. Avoidant men don't transform overnight. They don't wake up one day and suddenly feel completely comfortable with intimacy. The process of unlearning their subconscious fears takes time. If you're constantly expecting immediate change, it can push him further into his avoidance. But when you show that you're not rushing the process, that you trust the connection to unfold naturally, he feels less pressure to withdraw. Another powerful strategy is to lead with emotional regulation. Many avoidant men have experienced relationships where emotions were used as weapons, where anger, neediness, or unpredictability created instability. If he associates relationships with emotional volatility, he will instinctively distance himself. But when he sees that you can handle your emotions in a balanced way, that you express feelings without blame, that you communicate with clarity rather than desperation, he starts to associate the relationship with peace rather than stress. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't have needs. It means expressing them in a way that is calm, direct, and secure. Instead of saying, "Why do you always pull away?" you say, "I value our connection, and I want us to find a balance that works for both of us." Instead of reacting with anxiety when he needs space, you acknowledge his need for distance while also maintaining your own sense of self. This approach makes all the difference because it shifts the relationship from being something he has to manage to something he feels safe embracing. Finally, the most important aspect of creating emotional safety is modeling security. When he sees that you are secure in yourself, that you don't need constant reassurance, that you have a life full of purpose and joy outside of the relationship, he starts to relax. He stops seeing love as something that requires him to be constantly on or meeting expectations. Instead, he begins to see it as something that enhances his life rather than restricts it. When love feels safe, an avoidant man no longer has a reason to run. He realizes that connection doesn't have to come at the cost of his independence. He sees that being close to you doesn't mean losing himself, it means gaining something beautiful. And that's when he stops pulling away, not because he's been forced to change, but because he finally feels free to stay. At the core of every relationship is a simple but powerful truth. Love should feel like freedom, not a burden. An avoidant man doesn't pull away because he doesn't care. He pulls away because he fears losing himself. But when love feels safe, when it feels light rather than heavy, when it allows space rather than demands closeness, everything shifts. He no longer sees connection as something to escape from, but as something that enriches his life. The key isn't to chase, demand, or force him to open up. It's to embody security within yourself, to create an environment where he can come closer at his own pace. It's about breaking emotional patterns that create distance, shifting from pressure to playfulness, and leading with calm confidence instead of fear. When you do this, he stops seeing love as something that takes away from him and starts seeing it as something he never wants to lose. The power is in your hands, not to change him, but to change how the relationship feels. When you create an atmosphere of trust, when you bring lightness instead of intensity, when you allow closeness to happen naturally rather than forcing it, he no longer feels the need to pull away. Instead, he chooses to stay not because he has to, but because he wants to. Thank you for being here today, for being open to learning, growing, and shifting your perspective. Relationships are not about control. They are about connection. And when you build a connection based on trust, security, and emotional freedom, you create something that lasts. I appreciate your time, your energy, and your willingness to step into a new way of love. Thank you.